Welcome to this month's interview in the series Musician Profiles, Celebrating Racial Diversity from the International Conference of Symphony and Opera Musicians, otherwise known as ICSOM. My name is Doug Rosenthal. I'm the Associate Principal Trombonist with the Pittsburgh Symphony, and I'm joined today by Viviana Cumplido Wilson, who is the Principal Flute of the Phoenix Symphony. Welcome, Viviana.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course. Would you like to kick things off by just telling us what, your background and everything?
Sure. I have been in the Phoenix Symphony now since 2006. I grew up in Miami, Florida. I started my musical journey as a pianist. I was 6 years old, and later on in Miami, I was very lucky to just sort of grow up in a place where we had a lot of these public magnet schools for arts around. And so I went to a public school, junior high school that had a magnet music program. I went as a piano major. And as my second music elective, I wanted to play the flute and started there in beginning band. And that's where it all began.
Wow. So when you were in the school, is that the first time that you heard an orchestra?
No, I honestly cannot recall a time that I was not aware of classical music. I don't come from a musical family. I'm the only musician in my family, but my grandmother was an avid, like, opera and classical music fan. She just loved it. And so when I was born, she basically sat me down and we would listen to music together. And I truly don't remember a time where we weren't doing that. And so she was my introduction to classical music. And so I remember my mother thought it was so funny to see me looking for my grandmother, wondering, like, when are we going to go listen to Pavarotti? Because that was just what we did.
Oh, that's awesome. Was there like a particular opera or like recorded recital or anything that comes to mind?
She loved her Puccini operas. She also loved solo piano. We listened to a lot of piano, so it was no surprise that I started as a pianist.
Yeah. Wow. Do you recall the first time you heard an orchestra live?
I don't remember the exact experience, but I do remember she and my mother as well. They would take me to the ballet or to musical theater. And I was always more fixated on the orchestra than anything happening on stage. I was just like constantly looking down into the pit, from wherever balcony seat. I had my little like opera glasses and would just be watching the orchestra the whole time.
Oh, wow. So in Miami, then, is that the Miami City Ballet that you would go see?
Yes.
That's great. And I think they, like 15 years ago, I know they weren't using orchestra, but I think since then they've brought the orchestra back.
I think so, yeah. I've
Which,
been seeing, old friends of mine playing with them.
that's great. Because
Yeah.
obviously live music is the
Makes
whole
such a
experience.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah. um, well, that's great. And so piano was your first instrument. When did you switch to the flute? What was the story there?
Well, I honestly, my mother says that I had this idea of playing the flute because we went to some party when I was young where they had a strolling flutist entertaining the guests, and that, made me want to play the flute. I don't remember that, but I like the story, so we're going to go with it. And so when I got to that magnet junior high school and I needed a second music elective, I was like, well, here we go. I'm going to play the flute now. And I think for me, as much as, the piano is an amazing instrument. I love playing it. And I was kind of good for, a kid. But all of a sudden, like, playing in an ensemble just was a game changer for me. Like, I wasn't a sporty kid growing up. So it was just all of a sudden I had my team. It's like, oh, we do this thing together. We get to like play concerts together. And it was just a group activity. Piano is quite solitary. And so I think if you're, you know, more of a social butterfly,
Which you are.
being in the band definitely was more appealing to me on all fronts.
Wow. So would you say there was a particular moment that inspired you to go into a career in music?
It's funny. I'd always thought I was going to go into medicine. That was like my first sort of career goal or, inclination. And it what actually really changed my trajectory was the summer before my senior year of high school. And I was at another like arts magnet high school in Miami, the New World School of the Arts. And I was fortunate enough, thanks to some generous people in my community, I was able to go to Interlochen the summer before my senior year of high school. And that, the fact that I was, successful there, like I didn't, like, I felt like, oh my God, this is going to be so intimidating. All these like people from everywhere, they're so good. And, the fact that I could kind of hold my own and I enjoyed it so much. And I was around all these people who were so like dedicated and working really hard. And all of a sudden I just kind of like, I think that was the first time I really saw like the possibility of this for me. Before that, I thought that was just sort of like for other people. I don't know. So, so
So
yeah,
you
that changed everything. And all of a sudden I was applying to music schools.
so you were at the Interlochen Academy like during the school year.
No, no, no. This is the summer. So this is the summer
Oh,
before
gotcha.
my senior year. Yeah.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Um, well, and where did you end up going after Interlochen and the New World School?
I did my undergrad at New England Conservatory. My teacher was Fenwick Smith. He's amazing. And then I did my master's at University of Southern California with Jim Walker.
Right. And then was the Tucson Symphony immediately after that, or was
It
there?
was. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was very lucky, basically, right? I think it was like a week or two before graduation, I got that job. And so I was like, okay, I guess this is what I'm going to do now.
Wow. I mean, that's the dream, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I know. I'm very lucky.
well, you obviously worked very hard for it. And when you were in the Tucson Symphony, you were in a woodwind quintet that was very
Yes.
active in going into the schools.
Yeah, so it was part of, our season. It was built in that, we had woodwind quintet, brass quintet, string quartet that would do a lot of outreach in the school system. And, not for like, as we know, for a lot of these schools, this is basically the only music education they're going to get. And, Tucson, very large Mexican American community there too. So a lot of, schools that were predominantly Mexican. As well. And what was curious for me, because I mean, I'd never really, it wasn't until I left Miami that I sort of saw myself as like an other, because in Miami, growing up as like a Cuban American kid, that's like every other person kind of, So in terms of like visibility and seeing myself in the world, I mean, Miami was very much that, I felt very much a part of that community. And then when I left there, all of a sudden it was just like I often found people wondering, like, what are you? I was like the first time I'd ever like encountered that before, And so fast forward, I'm doing these outreach concerts in Tucson, and mind you, I'm not Mexican, so I don't, identify with that community. However, in terms of physical similarities, I was playing these concerts for these kids and, a lot of, Mexican kids and had a great time, very successful. I found out about this later on where one of the teachers reached out to me afterwards and she said, oh my God, the kids just loved you. And I thought, me? Because like the quintet was filled with very dynamic people. I was like actually kind of like not super outgoing at that time with,
That's hard to believe.
there were others, bigger personalities than myself
Okay. Oh,
in
I
this
see.
group.
I see.
Yeah. And so, and I was like, really? And she was like, oh yeah. They said they were all after this concert, they were like, Miss, she's brown like us. Like they couldn't, like they literally said that to her.
Wow.
And I was kind of like, oh, right. Like they don't often see people who look like themselves playing this type of music. And, I think that was the first time I really had like that sort of direct line experience that I was aware of, where it was just like, okay, like this means a lot.
Wow. And so now fast forwarding to the work you do with the Phoenix Symphony, um, have you ever encountered another concert where you had people tell you something similar or
I mean, not upfront, maybe, somewhere behind the scenes, but yeah, we certainly have played at a wide range of different communities in Phoenix as well. But yeah, I think that was the first time I'd ever had it like directly expressed to me in such a way.
sure. Wow. That must have been really special. I mean, that's a big deal. Especially
Yeah,
considering where you came from and now where you
right.
were.
Yeah. Yeah, it was it sort of made me realize that like I was also operating as someone like, these kids where I'm sort of like looking for the person like me, but didn't
Mm,
realize that like I wasn't seeing other people like me.
mm,
It wasn't until these kids pointed it out that it's like, oh, we're alike. And I was like, oh, right, we are.
mm.
I, yeah.
Wow. Wow. Um, well, so that's great. So you did all that work in Tucson, and then was Phoenix immediately after Tucson?
It was, yes. I spent 3 years in the Tucson Symphony and then I won the position in Phoenix in 2006.
That's great. Is there a particular concert, either in the Phoenix Symphony or anywhere else, that will kind of always stand out as, very memorable to you?
Right. I have been very fortunate to be featured on several occasions as a concerto soloist with my orchestras, whether it was here in Phoenix or in the summer I play with the Colorado Music Festival or in Tucson as well. And, you know, I mean, and it's not like, those aren't everyday experiences, but I've gotten to have a few of those and they stay with me, not just because it's like, oh, the Vivi show, like that's not it. It's, I'm being supported by my team, so even like getting to stand out there and play, this concerto, whatever it is, the fact that I'm looking around behind me and I'm seeing like the people that I care about and work with every day, and they're sort of like bringing their A game for me, you know like that stays with you. It's not lost on me that it's sort of like, they might not necessarily give that much like special attention or care. I mean, we always care about, the performances we're doing, but when it's someone up there, you kind of like, you're really like rooting for them and you play in a way that's rooting for them. And I certainly have felt that from my colleagues. So I'm very grateful for that. And yeah, and those concerts will stay with me always.
Mm. Which concertos, which composers have you performed with the Phoenix
Um,
Symphony?
with the Phoenix Symphony, I've performed Corigliano Pied Piper Fantasy, um, the Nielsen Concerto, Reinecke Concerto. We did an arrangement of the Mozart Flute Quartet in D, um, the Bach Suite in B minor. That was really fun. So yeah,
So the arrangement of the Mozart, was that you standing in front of orchestra?
it was, yeah. And so basically, like filling out the string quartet with all the strings.
So it was for flute and strings then.
Yeah, yeah.
No trombones, but
We'll figure that out. We'll we'll create something unique and special.
It's never too late.
I
Um,
know.
well, and I'm thinking the Corigliano, there many of his pieces have very unique instrumentations. Is there
Yes.
anything unique about the Corigliano piece?
There is. You actually have to switch to tin whistle at the end of it. So it's basically, taking you through the story of the Pied Piper. And at the end, of course, he leads the children out of the town, and with his tin whistle. And so this piece actually has a children's flute choir that appears, like emerges in the audience. And so when you switch to tin whistle, you're basically calling all the kids And so then they like, all it's like a call and response thing. And then they come up on stage and then you walk them all out and the piece ends off stage.
Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
who were the kids? Were
Uh,
they actual kids or
oh yeah, yeah. We, scouted a bunch of like young flute players. It's not a super complicated part, but they had to like be able to memorize it. Um, and then each like one of those little groups had sort of like an older student that could sort of be the leader for each team, so the little ones could follow them around. But it was really cute.
wow, I'm so curious about the logistics of all this. If you don't
Yeah.
mind all the
No.
questions. So where in the hall were they? How many of them were
Right.
there?
So they were all waiting in the wings, so to speak. So basically, like, and this is like a pretty substantial concerto. It's like a good maybe 20 minutes or so. And so by the time, you switch to tin whistle, um, the kids, someone sort of with them and brings them quietly into their spots in the hall. So there was like, in three different, like, spots far away, like all the way at the back of the stage so that they could like convene and come together onto the
Oh, I
stage.
see. So they're on
Yeah.
stage. They're not coming in.
Eventually
Oh, got it.
they're playing and walking onto the stage.
I
And then
see.
we all leave together.
So none of this, they're not like coming from the audience.
Yes, no, they are coming
Oh.
from the audience. Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
listening, I promise.
So yeah, so just imagine everyone's out in the audience, and then all of a sudden, like, these little kidlets pop up and have their flutes
Got it.
and start playing. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. This would be such a great I don't know. I feel like it's such a great combination of like something that would be on a subscription concert, but also
Hmm.
like a way to incorporate community involvement in a concert.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my um one of my dearest students who's now a college graduate, but she, started flute with me because of that piece. Like she was playing in band, and the mom like found out about this and said, "I don't know if she's ready to play this thing and whatever." And but she did, and she was my student for like 8 years after that. And then she actually met her best friend in that little flute choir, the two little flute players, and they're still best friends to this
Oh
day.
my
I
oh my
know, it's so
gosh.
sweet.
That's so precious.
I know.
Wow, and
Yeah.
are they both still flautists or
They're both still playing. They've both studied other things. I think one political science. I can't remember what the other one studied, but they're both very smart kids.
wow, but
Yeah.
I don't you gave them this gift. I mean, that's
I
so
mean, it's lovely to sort of like have been a part of that, you know.
sure.
Yeah, and have that connection.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Um, well, we're nearing the end here. And there's one more question I wanted to ask. If we
Yeah.
were on RuPaul's Drag Race, I would actually hold up a photo of Viviana as a child. But
Oh
um,
gosh, I do have one. Should I pull one up?
yes.
I do. I have this like photo of my first day of school that
Oh,
reminds me of like
yeah. Go get it. Absolutely. Oh.
it's
Oh, and
baby
so are
Vivi.
are
And
you
for
standing?
any Florida children, any Florida kids who grew up in the 80s, I'm holding a Burdines bag as my lunch bag.
Love that. So is that what now was that in the yard of your house or was that near
No,
the
that was in
school
front of
or
the school. Like,
okay.
yeah, the little like the sign of the placard is behind me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so now that you're looking at that adorable photo, if you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I would tell myself not to chase awards, not to chase accolades, to just enjoy the process of what you're doing, enjoy the experience in the moment without burdening yourself with outcomes or opinions, just like ultimately it's you and your craft or whatever you've chosen to do. And you have to be the one loving it, not like looking for the outside validation, which I mean, it's hard not to. We're performers, you know, but it's sort of like, it's just you and your instrument at the end of the day, and you have to be happy with what you're doing regardless of what anybody else says about it, because even if you do get all the awards and all the accolades, like, then what? You still have to love what you're doing and enjoy the process, or else it sort of it feels empty. So that would be what I would tell her.
Mm, that's so beautiful and so true and pure. Well, this has been so fun seeing you again. It's
Well,
been a couple
likewise.
years.
Yes.
This has been an interview of the ICSOM's musician profiles celebrating racial diversity with Viviana Cumplido Wilson. And before we go, just is there anything else you'd like to sign off with? The floor is yours.
I'm delighted to have, this experience with you and to get to talk about these things. And I'm grateful to sort of have any kind of platform that will help, whether it's others feel seen or help people, find their way in a world where they don't see themselves.
Thanks, Vivi.
Thank you.